friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my October wrap-up. I read a lot of books in October. This is what happens when you trade in those 700 chunky page fantasies for those 300 page horror books. You can read a lot. In October, I read a total of 18 books, which came to a total of 5,889 pages, which only averages about 189 pages a day, which is on the lower side of what I normally average, but not far off. My most read genre in October was horror. I'm unsurprised by this. I really prioritized reading horror this month. And let's start with our first read of the month, which was Head Like a Hole. Head Like a Hole was a weird story. It's about a character who finds a head in the ocean, and the head can talk, and it tries to eat his finger, and then things get weird from there. That's pretty much all the synopsis I'm gonna give you. This was a weird story in my opinion. Disjointed at times, but like that added to the weirdness. Overall, I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I had problems with the ending. It was a little too ambiguous for my own personal taste. And that's all. I literally have not a lot to say about a lot of these horror books because I don't know how people talk about horror books. Let's move on to the next one. The next book I read was Mayfly, which was my 2-star for the month. This is a love letter to American Psycho. You can definitely see the inspiration from American Psycho. This was very much in our character's head. We're following our main character, who is a Disney princess by day and a serial killer by night. We watch her spiral into the serial killerness, and she could be funny at times, but for the most part, I was just bored being in her head. It was just very like stream of consciousness, almost like slice of life, but like obviously you're watching her do like serial killer things, so it's weird to say slice of life. And I don't know, I just didn't engage to this. I think maybe if you were more of an American Psycho fan, you could. There are definitely like scenes that are heavily inspired by American Psycho in this. Overall, it didn't really work for me, but I know a lot of people who did love it. Next up, we have Briardark, which I gave 3 stars. I really actually enjoyed this one. This is the start of a series. We definitely didn't get enough answers for me in this book, and I think that's because it is a trilogy, but it did knock out my enjoyment a little bit not getting those answers. We're essentially following our main characters, who are scientists who are going on an expedition to do some science. But when they get to this spot called Briardark, science ain't sciencing. Like, the trees are growing in one day instead of hundreds of years. The glacier is melting, but like was not melting at all the day before. There is just strange occurrences happening, and also a dead body that's there 1 second and then gone the next. And this was, again, another weird story, but I really liked the science elements in it. I loved the way it was told. I definitely will be picking up book 2, so I'm really excited that I read this one. Next up, I read There's No Way I'd Die First by Lisa Springer. This was for Sav's book club, Riveting Reads, Lights Out Book Club. There is a live show for this that I will link down below for you all to go hang out and watch us. I am in the minority here, and I had a really fun time and really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. Most people gave it 3, and a lot of people gave it 2. There were a couple people who, like me, really enjoyed this, but I definitely think this is a book that you can't go in taking too seriously. Like, it is ridiculous to an extreme that makes it funny, and if you're not on board with that, you definitely won't like it. Like, there's a scene where someone is pooping in a purse, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious, but I know a lot of people at the live show thought it was so stupid, so I think it's definitely a book that could work for you or couldn't. This is about our main character who loves horror movies. She ends up having a party on Halloween and hires a clown to come play tag. The clown ends up not playing tag and instead starts murdering everyone when he catches them. And our main character thinks there's no way she'd die first because she's obviously a horror movie fanatic and she knows every dumb decision and every good decision to make in a scene like this. More often than not, I think she's making the dumb decisions, but I think the thing with horror movies is the dumb decisions are the things you would make, because although they seem dumb, when you actually rationalize them and are in someone's head, you understand why they're making those decisions. It's just hard because we know it's a horror movie, we know what's going on, we're an outsider looking in. One complaint with this is the characters. The characters are the select few. We're talking influencer kids, we're talking kids who are rich and privileged, and that is the point of the story. There is a discussion and a conversation on privilege and stuff within the story. There is politics that come into play within the story, which is something I really enjoy in a slasher, but I know not everyone does. Like, I definitely prefer my slasher to have a little bit more depth than just going around killing people. In some ways, this definitely reminded me of Scream. I loved the clown. I think that he reminded me of Ghostface so much because he was just so funny. I think this could vibe with you or not vibe with you. It really did vibe with me. It's not a book that I definitely will be recommending to a lot of people, but if you're looking for just like a fun, easy to read slasher that you just aren't going to take too seriously, because there's definitely some issues with like the house and like some logical issues definitely in this, but like overall it's just a fun time. So if you're looking for a fun time, I would recommend this to you. The next book I read was Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. Darcy is a favorite author of mine, so I knew this was probably going to be a hit when I picked it up. This is more of a thriller than a horror for Darcy, but it definitely has horror elements to it. We're following our main character who is going on a exclusive ski trip. There is about 10 other people going on the ski trip with her, but on their way up to the ski lodge, they get stranded, and in the middle of the night, the tour guide goes missing, only to end up dead the next day, and from there, one by one, they start being killed off. This book had such good atmosphere. It made me feel so cold and claustrophobic, like I was stuck with them. Although it definitely is predictable, it was just a really fun ride. I enjoyed where we were going. I loved being in our character's head, seeing her rationalize different things, seeing her try to figure out who the killer was. I loved the cold elements as someone who lives in a very cold climate at times. They felt very true and real, and like Darcy Coates lives in Australia, so the research she did, pretty on par. This, if you're looking for a winter thriller with a little bit of horror, like there is more gore in this than I feel like your typical thriller, pick this up. 100% will be recommending this for winter books. Then I read The September House, which I really enjoyed. I gave 3 stars. This follows our main character who buys her first house. All she's ever wanted to do in her life was buy a house, and when she does, it comes haunted. But instead of being like any other haunted house story where they try to escape the haunting, she decides to just live in it and live with the ghosts. And this adds for a interesting tale because it's something very unique and I feel like I haven't seen done before. Underneath the haunted house story, there is a beautiful story about abuse and relationships and things like that, and I think that this was done really, really well. At times the pacing was a little bit off for me, but overall I just really enjoyed this story and it felt like a really good intro to horror. It wasn't super scary, but it definitely still had horror elements to it. If you're looking to just try horror, I would actually recommend this one quite a bit. I really enjoyed this. I will definitely be picking up more from this author. Next up, I picked up What Kind of Mother by Clay McLeod Chapman, a previous 5-star author from me. However, this one did sadly let me down. I felt like this was a little bit too domestic for me. I'm not necessarily a domestic thriller or domestic horror person, and I wanted it to be weirder than it was, and I kept seeing online people like freaking out about the crabs, and then I just like didn't find it that weird, and I think my expectations were probably just a little bit too high based on comments online and also how much I loved and thought Ghost Eaters was so weird. This follows our main character who has moved back to her old hometown and has become a palm reader. And here she connects with her old high school flame, even going so far as reading his palm because his child went missing years ago, and the rest of the world has decided that the child is dead, but he still believes his child was kidnapped and is out there and missing, and they try to find this child throughout the story. I have nothing else to say about this. I gave it 3 stars. It was average, okay. I liked it better than Whisper Down the Lane, but it was no Ghost Eaters to me. Next up, I read House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I gave this book 3 stars. I did enjoy it, but I think I had expectations again going into this that this was going to be very, very atmospheric, and although it was, it also just felt very lacking on the atmosphere for me. I had pacing issues with it, and I just like didn't understand a lot of the character motivations and some of like the insta-love. I think I wanted a lot more vampire lore within this than I got. My expectations for this were just different than what I got, and it just didn't end up working for me. However, I know it works for so many other people. The House of Hunger follows our main character who is poor, so she ends up selling herself to be a blood maid. Blood maids are essentially walking, talking IV bags for the vampires in this world. Vampires are actually never used. It's never stated that anyone is a vampire, but like it is kind of clear in my opinion. She's told that as a blood maid she will essentially feed this vampire for however long, and then she will retire with a bunch of money and live happily ever after that. and she goes to the House of Hunger, which is indeed known for the best retirement packages and things like that. But not all is what it seems at the House of Hunger. I definitely feel like this was an interesting vampire story and unique, but just not necessarily like my favorite vampire story. Next up, I read The Nightmare Man, which I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. We're following our main character who has to write his next best-selling hit. So he goes off to a cabin that his grandfather owned, spends 3 days there, and writes the entire book. He doesn't actually remember what happened up there. He just wrote this book and then he publishes it. But after it's been published, it seems that someone is becoming a copycat killer and copycatting the murders that happen within the story. But some of this happened before the book was ever out. I often was trying to figure out where all the pieces fit in throughout the story, and I really love being able to do that in a novel and try to like guess with our main character what is actually going down. And after that, I picked up The Nestlings, which, like, 5 stars. Nat Cassidy is quickly becoming a favorite author of mine. He just does what he does so well. This story is suffocating and claustrophobic. You're in a main character's head, and you just feel so disturbed, and, like, you want out of their head so badly, but it adds to the horror, and, like, you're so intrigued by what's going on. Like, I can't explain his writing style. It is very stream of consciousness, but it works so well, and he just really makes everything feel so tense and incredible and spooky, and he gives me some of the best atmosphere that I have yet to read in horror. This story is Salem's Lot meets Rosemary's Baby, so if you know anything about the two of those, you kind of already know what to expect going in. Like, I do think that is a perfect way to explain this story. We're following our 2 characters who just had a baby, but when having this child, our mother actually is paralyzed from the waist down. The child hits a nerve. This is a very, very rare thing that can happen in childbirth, but of course it did happen to her. And so now they're not only dealing with having a new baby, but she's also dealing with her new situation, and her emotions are running a little bit high. They think that they are just down on their luck, nothing good is happening to them. When they're offered a lucky break and they win the, like, affordable housing lottery, which means they get one of the nicer apartments within New York for an affordable price, and so they're going to this very rich apartment and are moving in, except for this apartment really isn't that wheelchair friendly, and it's not all that it seems. There is definitely some weird stuff happening within this New York apartment, and I just loved it so much. Like, I loved this so freaking much. This and Mary are both incredible. Please read them. Amazing. Chef's kiss if you are looking to read horror. Nat Cassidy is where it's at. Definitely where it's at. Also this month I read Tastes Like Candy, which I gave 3 stars. This is another just slasher. I enjoyed this one, but I definitely didn't think that it was as fun as some of the other slashers I've read. When going into a slasher, I'm definitely looking for fun kills and things like that. And although I did like that the kills in this revolved around the carnival that they're at, I think the kills are very anticlimactic for me because of a choice the author makes to have the kids be high. And also they act way higher than I feel like any weed gummy is going to make you. But that's just a thing that I have to point out. This follows our main characters who are invited to, like, a scavenger hunt night. Every year when they're going into, the last grade of school, one of the students puts on a scavenger hunt. It's normally done at the school and invites a select few of, like, the coolest students to it. This year, though, they decide to do it at a nearby carnival, and things get messy from there when someone shows up and starts killing them. Slashers are so hard to talk about because they're just a slasher. Like, you're just gonna see a bunch of kids die over and over and over again until we finally have a final girl. I think that this one was fun. I would recommend it. We had a lot of character work in it, but it just wasn't my favorite slasher. Next up I read The Runes, which I gave 3 stars. I liked this book but didn't like it at times, so it's really hard to talk about. This follows our main characters in Mexico who go to the jungle in Mexico to try and find one of their traveling companions' brother who went missing. They stumble across these runes and they aren't allowed to leave because there are people surrounding the runes that will kill them as the runes slowly kill them. This is an eco horror, so it's a lot about nature killing them and things like that. that. There are definitely some cool concepts in this, and I liked a lot of what happened, but I also really disliked some of the characters that the author makes the female characters make. I definitely could tell it was written by a man. Next up, I read Found, which is an anthology of found footage horror short stories. I gave this collection overall a 4-star. There were definitely some really big wins here for me, and definitely some that were like mediocre, but there were no like flops in this really for me. I don't really know how to talk about this because it's a short story collection, so like I can't tell you really what it's about, but I really did like how we brought the found footage elements into it. The like mixed media formats were really cool. They added to the creepiness. There's like a lot of Reddit threads that happen within it, and I thought that was really cool. We had some really good stories that were really interesting and spooky, and there are definitely some authors I would like to read from again within this collection. If you enjoy short story collections at all, I definitely would recommend this. But other than that, I don't know what to say. Next up, I read The House Next Door by Darcy Coates. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. This is what Darcy does really well, which is a haunted house story. I thought this one was really cool because we're following our main character who lives next door to a haunted house. So she's just watching people move in and leave out of this house constantly because it's haunted. There's a weird ambience and feeling within the street that this haunted house even lives in. People just like close their blinds and pretend nothing ever goes on at that house when she has a neighbor move in that she decides to become friends with. And we watch as they have to help her friend deal with this house that she cannot leave due to outside influences. I really liked the twist that it was someone else's house that was haunted. I thought that was really fun. And overall, I just think Darcy does atmosphere so well in a haunted house story. And I just felt so invested in what was going on in the story. If you're looking for a haunted house story with a little bit of a unique take, I definitely would recommend this. If you liked The September House, I maybe would recommend this one as well. Next up, I read Blood Solace by Villa Raw. This is a continuation of the Blood Grey series, which starts with Blood Mercy. I gave Blood Mercy 4 stars, and I continued to love this series, and I gave Blood Solace 4 stars as well. This is a chunky boy. I get it. It's not for everyone. It kind of reminds me of Wheel of Time in a way that, like, you're just watching your characters go through some shit. If you're invested into the characters, you will like it, but if you're not, you're probably going to find it really boring because the plot is so meandering in this, but I love these characters. This follows Leo and Cassia, who are of different species. Leo is a Hesperine, which is a vampire, and Cassia is a human. When in the first book, their 2 species have a treaty that they're supposed to redo every like 50 or 100 years or something. It is now time to redo this treaty, so the Hesperines come to the human area to sign this treaty, but the king does not want to sign them, and we follow Leo and Cassia during this time as they are the first person that they've ever come in contact to of the other species, and they just get to know each other, and it's so beautiful and heartwarming, and I just like love it. I love the epicness of this world. It feels truly like an epic fantasy. There is a grand scale to things that are happening. The world is well thought out. There's so much information about lore and history and things like that. I truly, truly think that this is romance meets epic fantasy, and I love it so much. I can't wait to continue on in the series. Leo is just a cinnamon roll, and everything he says makes my heart melt so freaking much. Ugh, amazing. Chef's kiss. I highly recommend checking the series out, but I definitely know it is not for everybody. Next up, I read Camp Damascus, which follows a really religious community where there is something called Camp Damascus, which is a gay conversion camp. It has one of the highest success rates in the entire country, but the secrets behind its success rate are very, very sinister. And we follow our main character who looks into Camp Damascus and realizes the truth behind it. There is beautiful, beautiful discussions about being queer and being queer within a religious community like this and things like that, and prejudice and everything like this has such beautiful, beautiful discussions. Enjoyment-wise, I just felt the pacing was off. I was bored at times for like enjoyment of a story, but I do think it had just stunning, stunning, stunning discussions, and I think that if you could relate to this situation more than I could, you would definitely get so invested into the story and never find it boring. So it is very personal to my reading taste. I did give this 3 stars, but it is a book that I will recommend to a lot of people because it is a beautiful, beautiful story. Then we had a bit of a nostalgia read, and I picked up Betrayed by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. This was a buddy read along with our patrons. We are ending on this one. No one wanted to continue, but we were just living in a little bit of nostalgia and reading some of the House and Night series before me and Mel go meet the authors at a Polycon. This follows our main character Zoe, who was marked, which means she's turned into a fledgling vampire and has to go to the House of Night, which is a boarding school for fledgling vampires. And there is all the school drama you would expect, but also some fun vampire lore and a plot going on. But it's a lot of like teeny boppery drama. There is a lot of pop culture references within this. It is so cringe. This story does not hold up in any way. I still gave it 3 stars for nostalgia, but if you had never read this as a child, I would not recommend picking it up. I don't think it holds up, don't think it crosses the test of time, but I enjoyed my reread of it just because I loved it so much when I was a kid. And lastly, I read The Haunting of Lee Harker by Darcy Coates. Every October, there's always a lot of Darcy read because I just love Darcy so much. And I'm trying to read her entire backlist. This one I gave 3 stars. It's actually my least favorite Darcy that I've read, but like I still really enjoyed it. We're following our main character who lives in a haunted house. She's lived in this house for 10 years, and so I did like that the house was not just like a new house she moved into that was haunted like every other haunted house story. I liked that it's haunted for some weird reason now, and we have to figure out why now, and I felt that was really intriguing and engaging. I just think the pacing was very off in this story. There were times that I was like on the edge of my seat, and then there were times that it just like had a lull and was very repetitive. But like overall, I think it was a very, very unique haunted house story, and I just like love Darcy for the atmosphere she writes. I think that this still had incredible atmosphere. Darcy Coates is incredible and can do no wrong, and even though this was my least favorite Darcy that I've read so far, it still does no wrong in my opinion. Darcy is a cozier author, so if you are looking to get into horror as well, I always recommend Darcy. She just is chef's kiss. There we go. Those are all the books I read in October. There was a lot of them. I am tired of talking. I have coffee to drink. Let me know down below what your favorite read of October was. I'm always excited to see what everybody was picking up and to get some recommendations from your favorites down below. But if you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a snow emoji for Dead of Winter. And then if you want to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.